Hello, and thanks for checking out this video lecture. Today I want to cover Bruno Latour's How We Became Modern by way of kind of a review. You guys took a look at that a couple weeks ago, participated on a discussion thread, and since it is really dense stuff that you guys waded through, I wanted to highlight some more of those concepts and kind of reinforce how they relate to the prevailing themes of what we're doing in science writing. One of kind of the touchstones, I feel like, is to understand what science is and how we do it and why we do it and how we communicate about it. It's looking at science in a way that's it's more than just collecting facts, right? It's also about making ethical appeals. It's about connecting areas of knowledge. It's about not working in a vacuum. It's about understanding how science connects to culture. And that kind of is what Latour is talking about in his first chapter. So I'm going to touch on a couple things here: the proliferation of hybrids, the imbroglio, as well as this tricky term called the modern and modernity. So let's look at this quote about the proliferation of hybrids and see if we can understand what the heck he's talking about there. And the quote from the text is, he says, "Those hybrid articles that sketch our imbroglios of science, politics, economy, law, religion, technology, fiction." All right, so one of the big themes of this chapter is the breaking down of disciplinary boundaries, right? That's where he ends up. The proliferation of hybrids is this concept that the more modern we become, or the more technologically advanced, the more we progress, the more we realize how connected all of these different disciplines are. And so proliferation is a great amount of something, and a hybrid is a mixture of something, right? And so his point here is that these different disciplines that we have, we're learning that they're all connected, that they're all hybrids, that these bodies, like science is a hybrid. Science is a hybrid of technology, of politics, of culture, even maybe literature. And so these things mesh together, but they are called imbroglios, right? What a great word that is. Silent G word. And so an imbroglio would be a complicated mess, right? A mass confusion. In the class, I had posted a knot, right? A knot that has all of these. It's like a mass of threads that are woven together. It's hard to follow the pattern, right? It just looks like a big bloody mess. That's an imbroglio. And so on the one hand, we have this neat and tidy separation of disciplines, which isn't accurate, okay? And then on the other hand, these are two sides of the same coin. On the other hand, we have the imbroglio, the proliferation of hybrid, okay? So who cares, right? That's maybe what you're thinking. Well, again, just so we're clear, we're looking at science, right? Science used to be over here. It's its own little discipline, right? It exists in a vacuum by itself with nice little boundaries and walls around it. Well, to understand and to write and to communicate about science properly, we have to kind of disable that notion, and we got to take it over here. Of course, it's not an either-or kind of situation, as we'll see here in a couple minutes. So imbroglio, again, proper definition, is a confused mass, an intricate or complicated situation, an embarrassing misunderstanding. We might call it now a mess. All right. So the complexity of modern life has to do with seeing complex systems interact and influence one another, as Latour says, quote, a single uncertain story mixing biology and society. Okay, there's a hybrid right there, right? Biology and society. And so part of understanding where we're at, again, is to understand that we have to see these things as interconnected, as networked, as fused together, that they are not existing apart. That's what we mean by modern life. Okay? And then Latour argues that our lives are more complex than they ever used to be. That should be pretty apparent. But we seem unable or incapable of understanding this. And this is the real trick. His argument is we can't oversimplify. We don't want to view our disciplines as these separate things. That would be doing a disservice, and it wouldn't be accurate. And so he says, hey, isn't this a funny paradox that the more complicated our lives become, and it wouldn't be too much to say, hey, look, modern life is more complicated in the sense that we're exposed to more information than any of our ancestors ever were. I'm forced by just watching the news to think about things that maybe 30 years ago I wouldn't be thinking about. Our news aggregators, right? If you flip through your phone, you're getting exposed to all these different titles and articles, and again, we're getting that exposure that you'd have to go seek out. Maybe you'd read the New York Times and you would seek out those things. But it's like having the New York Times every day. You guys are probably too young, but I used to get the New York Times on Sunday morning, and it was like a paper about that big. Well, you only got it once a week, but man, that was fun to read, right? There's just all kinds of stuff, everything, science, literature, politics, the whole thing. I feel I don't actually get the New York Times anymore, but I feel like when I look at my cell phone, and I go through my little aggregator applications, that in a sense I'm getting the New York Times every day. Because I'm just getting a diverse amount of articles. And so we are all bombarded with that. And that's not even getting into social media, which I don't want to do. So it's not too provocative to say that our modern lives are complicated. And maybe it's because of that complexity that we even more so want to make things simple and neat, right? But Latour's argument is that we have created false divisions and disciplines which limit now how we understand knowledge, so that these different divisions cannot actually be used simultaneously to describe the modern world. We can't rely on those divisions anymore, and it might be because of our highly networked lives and the way that information travels so quickly that we're learning that these divisions break down. But that also has something to do with this tricky concept called postmodernism. And I wanted to wrap things up with kind of talking about what modernism means and what postmodernism means by way of putting things into context again. When we say modern, this is so tricky, but when we say modern normally, we mean just anything that's contemporary. However, if you're an English major, you would know that modernism is actually an aesthetic movement and an artistic movement and a social movement that started in the late 1800s and which tried to account for massive industrialization, technological change, right? Like the advent of the car. It attempted to understand the quickening pace of our lives. And so modernism starts in the late 1800s and goes up through the mid 1900s, which is when postmodernism starts. The paradox of modernism is kind of what Latour is talking about. It was the modernists who liked to put things into tidy tidier categories. They were the ones who wanted to put art into high divisions and low divisions, and it was during, you know, kind of the height of modernism that we had different disciplines that were all neat and tidy and tucked away. It's actually when English as a study appeared as a discipline, an attempt to solidify a body of knowledge by experts. With postmodernism, and this is where Latour is coming from, postmodernism critiques modernism and says, hey, look, that's not really how things work. These divisions are false. They're arbitrary and they're fabricated. And it's the postmodernists who believe in the blurring of boundaries and the breaking down of those disciplinary walls. And that comes with, kind of simply put, the in the 1950s with the advent of mass media, television, radio, the proliferation of newspapers, and then later the internet, and even later than that the mobile devices we carry around with us. And so through postmodernism, ideas of postmodernism, we begin to see that things are more connected and depend upon one another in ways that the modernists did not. So the term modern is confusing. That was kind of my main point there. And so Latour, so again, it's not good or bad. It's just two sides of the same coin, right? The only way to merge disciplines and understand them as networks is to also separate them into disciplines to begin with. And if that sounds paradoxical, you know, of course it is, right? You can't merge things together if they haven't already been separated. And so it's not about decrying the modernists, you know, or decrying these disciplinary divisions. It's just that we have to recognize, you know, what we're dealing with here. And that is, you know, Latour's main point. So again, consider this another layer to our understanding of science and what it is and how we communicate and think about it. And I think our text, you know, again, underscores a lot of this in different ways. And so thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you guys in class. Thanks. Bye.